Hey, what's going on, everybody? Special guest here. It's Javi Salas, former Miami pitcher, former draft pick of the Brewers. Javi, what's going on? And I do want to mention threw a perfect game in college. Javi, what's going on?
Chris, happy to be here, man. Trying to stay dry. This Miami weather, it's been a little crazy the last couple of days, but enjoying my time here. Excited for this weekend. We got a star-studded regional, especially the names of the teams coming down here. Should be a really fun weekend in Coral Gables.
Yeah, and that's what we're here for. I'm excited to talk to you about this regional, about where Miami's at, and definitely we're going to break down the pitching, obviously with your expertise there. But let's just start right where Miami's at. Number 6 national seed, very exciting. Miami's hosting for the first time since 2016. They're looking for that first regional win since that year as well. I guess just going into it, obviously disappointed in the ACC tournament. Just overall take kind of where this team is going into regional play.
Yeah, I mean, the last weekend, I think in the ACC tournament kind of leaves a sour taste in your mouth. Going 0-2 is something you never want to do, especially with the high hopes and aspirations that this team had. I think being ranked as high as 2 at one point in this season. That being said, it's a brand new slate for this ball club. And I think the thing that intrigues me most is it's such a young team, right? So I think the psyche going into this regional is really important. Like I mentioned, the ACC tournament, obviously, it's not where you want to be in terms of backing into the tournament, but their resume throughout the season spoke for itself. Obviously, being named the number 6 national seed is a tremendous honor and a testament to Gino and JD and Norberto and the rest of the coaching staff for keeping this team, going in the right direction the entire season. I think this regional, obviously, it's new territory for a lot of different guys. I think the last 2 years with COVID, the experience factor of a lot of ball clubs kind of gets thrown out the window. We haven't played in front of crowds. A lot of these guys haven't played in a home regional, so it should be exciting. I think the team is heading in the right direction in terms of having at least the opportunity to play in front of your home fans, play in familiar confines. I'm just excited for the opportunity for these guys. I'm sure it's going to be eye-opening when they see on Friday and Saturday those big crowds at Marklight Stadium.
And it seems like the stadium's done well packing throughout the year. And Miami's 28-8 in home on the season. They've won 23 of the 27 regionals they've hosted in the history of this program. They've won over 83% of their games, regional games at Marklight Field there. And I think all that stuff's going to come into play. It certainly is going to be a factor in this. One of the things you mentioned, with the resume they put together, this has been, like you said, as high as 2, but really a top 10 team throughout the season. Some people might be surprised that they're 6 based on how things have gone. But look, had the second best record in the ACC, toughest conference in the country. 9 teams get into the tournament. So certainly that played into it. And Miami, sometimes I think when people doubt or criticize the team, look, going into this regional, which team would you rather be? And I think of the 4, you still would rather be Miami in this, regardless of what happened the last couple of games or even the last month, kind of dropping some games there. Javi, let's get into the pitching because, with any regional, it doesn't matter what team you have, it's how you set your pitching. Miami's going to open against Canisius on Friday there at noon. And then with Arizona and Ole Miss playing in that night game and winners playing double elimination 14 regional, in case anybody's new to this. How do you kind of see this? Miami's essentially got 4 options. Let's get right into it. Just what would you do essentially in the opening game?
I think the luxury Miami has is having a guy like Carson Palmquist, right? So for a fact you have a bona fide ace, guy who can beat anybody in the country any given day. I kind of throw out that NC State start. I don't know about you, but that AC tournament was wild. Balls were flying out of the park at an alarming rate. I think Kendall Rogers spoke to it about, possibly the balls being different this year. Balls are going out at rates before BB core status. So I throw out Palmquist last start. That being said, I think you got to start with either Garland or Carson Ligon in game 1 against Canisius. You got to think that those 2 guys have enough firepower to get past the 4th seed in this regional. And in my opinion, it's either or. I mean, I think their skill sets are pretty similar. Carson's obviously pitching the weekend, had a lot of great success in the early half of the season. He is a freshman, though, and he hasn't pitched this deep into a year ever in his career. So that's something you got to monitor. I think JD's got a pretty good pulse on what he wants to do. He knows where guys are at this point in the season. Also, I looked at the last game against Wake. Carson and Jake both pitched in that game. Another game he kind of just threw out the window. I mean, it was sort of a meaningless game from Miami's standpoint. They knew they couldn't advance into the semifinals. Wanted to get some work. They got their pitches in. The results weren't great, but if I'm the pitching coach, I'm going with either Carson or Jake game 1 against Canisius. keeping Palmquist, waiting in the wings to hopefully pitch in that winner's bracket all important game on Saturday.
And I've gone back and forth with kind of my thoughts on what you do in the opener against Canisius there. Like you said, I don't think there's any question. I think Carson they'll save for game 2. Because you're just save them. That's just kind of how it works. These guys have a lot of experience. Gino's the head coach, doesn't have a lot of experience, but he has plenty of experience as an assistant coach, understanding how all this thing works. Same way with JD. JD's been around. He knows this. He's had every situation essentially to go through with setting the rotation. To me personally, if I were to guess, I would think they would go with Garland. Just kind of my thoughts on it. Maybe a similar that you could throw him in there. He's been one of your captains. Kind of start him, and with Ligon kind of struggling there in the ACC tournament, maybe save him because he's been your number 2. So maybe save him for later. Although, and with the pitching staff, Javi, the big name that obviously comes up, and whenever we talk about it, is Alejandro Rosario. The struggles he's had. Honestly, personally, look, they have him. There's 4 starting pitchers in this. I wouldn't, for me, I wouldn't even be surprised if they wanted to go that route, because Alejandro's got to pitch at some point, essentially, unless they're going to go with the bullpen day, most likely, unless you go 3-0, which is hard to do. So they've got to go with one guy. So I wouldn't even be surprised at that, at trying to just overmatch him with his fastball, his stuff, and just try to overwhelm Canisius. And hopefully, from a Miami standpoint, you're always hoping for a big performance from your hitting. So maybe you get a big performance from your hitting, although Canisius has thrown a good pitcher. What are your thoughts on Alejandro and just kind of how he's been pitching? They certainly believe in him. They've got confidence in him.
Yeah, look, I'm a huge Rosario fan. I think his stuff matches up against anybody in the country. I think he's just been sort of affected by the hitting bug. He just gets hit. You look at what hitters are hitting against him. It's over 300, which is, kind of an eye-popping stat with a guy with his kind of stuff. I think when he's around the plate and he's throwing strikes and his secondary pitches are working for him, there's not a better guy in the country in terms of stuff. You see that fastball, upper 90s velocity. He's got a good slider. He's athletic. That being said, I don't know if you can go game 1 with Rosario, especially with some of the struggles he's had. I think it's so important just to set the tone for the weekend right out of the gate. And you have to imagine weather's going to play a factor here too. So you don't know at any point this weekend, there might be a game that's stretched out over 2 days. You don't want to burn a starter right away and then have him possibly gone for the rest of the weekend. So it's going to be interesting to see how the puzzle pieces fit here for Gino and JD. You mentioned their experience. They know what they're getting themselves into. It's a home regional. Weather's always going to be a factor in Coral Gables in the summer. So I love Rosario's stuff. I don't know if he's the kind of guy you want to throw out game 1. You did mention that he could probably overwhelm Canisius with his fastball and with his stuff, but I like the idea of Garland game 1. I like the idea of getting an experienced captain, guy who's pitched in big games before. Let's get him out there. Let's hope the offense explodes early on and really put some pressure on Canisius right from the get-go.
And like I said, if I were to guess, they've not announced that. If I were to kind of pick a guy, I think that's who they would go with there with Garland. And similar opponents to what he's faced. Javi, you've been a midweek guy. I was looking back at your 2014, your last year at the pitching you guys put together in the regional. Obviously, you come up short. You don't win the regional, but you guys allowed 8 runs in 5 games, which is incredible. 2 of your starters threw complete games. What do you kind of remember about that, and maybe kind of the role you were in going into the regional, and kind of what do you remember the discussions being as you guys tried to figure out who was going to start winning?
Yeah, in 2014, we had the luxury, I think, of having really experienced starting staff, right? So I think the 4 of us all had pitched, whether in weekend or weekday roles throughout our careers. We all called ourselves like amoebas. We didn't really care what day we pitched on. We were all sort of just whatever our day was, we were going to go out there and give our best stuff. The psyche of a pitcher in a regional, though, as a starter, the longer the regional progresses, and we had to come out of the losers bracket after we lost Texas Tech on that Saturday game. So, that immediately hinted to me, I'm going to get a start here. It's going to be a win or go home game. And if you're on a starting staff, you got to figure that you got to throw everything out the window, right? So you whether you're in a winner's bracket or a loser's bracket game, each game is of supreme importance. Throw out the weekend, weekday starter roles. It's all about, giving your team a chance to win in that particular game. And in 2014, I pitched behind Andy Suarez, Chris Diaz, and Brian Radzewski, who were 3 of the all-time greatest pitchers at Miami. So for me, it was a luxury to just, have a front row seat to those guys throwing. But, the regional presents, like I said, it's a new sort of experience. The games are heightened, the intensity's heightened. You're going to see a much shorter leash for starting pitchers and for relievers who can't get outs or are seemingly having some trouble getting in and out of innings. So you got to have the entire staff ready to go. And I think, a weekend like a regional, you're going to see guys like Gallo, McFarland have to probably be ready maybe in the third or fourth inning in roles that they're not necessarily used to. And they got to come in and get, 12 or 15 outs to sort of bridge the gap to, Zeal and Walters.
Yeah, let's stay with the bullpen because I find, like you mentioned, and I think that's going to happen. Whether it's Rosario, if he does get a start at some point, we saw it with Ligon, only goes 2 innings, couldn't get out of the third in the ACC tournament. They pulled him. Yeah, when games get away from you, or it looks like it, even a few base runners, certainly you got to make the move. And I think that they know that. This isn't, you can't play around with games here. Bullpen is going to be key. Let's talk about more of the middle relief guys, and we'll get into Andrew Walters a little bit, but maybe those key guys in the bullpen that, that might need to be used more than once or multiple innings.
Yeah, look, if I'm JD and Gino, I work backwards, right? So I know I have Walters. He's proven that he can get 6 outs. So that's 6 outs. Delete those 6 outs from the back of the game, right? Walters has been nails all season long. You have a guy like Zeal. He's another, 5 or 6 out guy. So you have 12 outs in the back of your bullpen that you're pretty confident throwing out there at any point in the game. And working backwards again, you have a guy like McFarland who's really come on as of late. His stuff is incredible. I saw him pitch last year at North Carolina, and I thought by far and away he was the best pitcher on staff in terms of stuff. You have an upper 90s velocity fastball, really good slider. He's really athletic, a lot of arms and elbows coming at you, kind of funky delivery. Gallo's come on late. And you're going to have to lean on those guys to bridge the gap. Look, I mentioned it earlier, weather being a factor. You don't know what I looked at the forecast this morning. It doesn't look great for the weekend. And from a pitcher's perspective, you're going to throw a starter out there. There might be rain in the third inning. And then you have this big decision. Do I put the starter back out there? Do I go to my bullpen? I think JD has the luxury of having 2 long relief guys in Gallo and McFarland that can get you 9 or 12 outs, possibly 15 outs if necessary. So you have those guys in your back pocket. Thinking again, working backwards, you have Walters and Zeal in the back end of your bullpen. So you got to piece together wins here. You don't care how it happens. You don't care if it's, getting 9 outs from your starter or getting 21 outs from your starter. You got to figure out, how do I get in the winner's bracket? How do I get to Sunday with a 2-0 record and have a team beat me twice? Because getting out of the loser's bracket in a regional is one of the most impossible tasks. You got to have a ton of arms. You got to have guys ready to go. It's going to be hot. The weather's going to play a factor. So it's so important to be in that winner's bracket this weekend.
Yeah. And, I'm curious about with pitching, because you touched on McFarland. He's certainly a guy, you can't obviously make moves on what to do at the starter. He was a guy that I've liked. We've talked about quite a bit. But Javi, I'm curious how many innings these guys are essentially stretched out to. You touched on multiple inning guys that maybe could give you 3 or 4. How does that process work as a reliever in terms of being able to throw that? Is it stuff you've worked on all season long? Obviously Alex started at the beginning of the year. He's just an example. You touched on Gallo as well. How do you know how long you're going to be able to go? How have you been working on as a pitcher? How are these guys been training to be ready for regionals?
Yeah, I think Alex is the case where he was stretched out as a starter early in the season. So he has a capability of going, 75 pitches plus if necessary. At this point of the year, he hasn't gone that far in a game in probably a couple months. So you don't necessarily expect that from him, but that it's a possibility. And he's an athletic guy. He's in good shape. You could tell that if JD needs him, I think there's a possibility he could probably go 75 pitches. But, I think the biggest thing as a reliever is how you bounce back, right? So there's going to be 3, 4, if you're coming out of loser's bracket, maybe 5 games you're going to have to play this weekend. So how do guys react if they pitch, you're asked to go back-to-back games? There's a certain threshold that, JD knows with every single guy that if, for example, if a guy like Gallo maybe throws 40 pitches, he's not going to be available for 1 day or 2 days. So I think the piecing together of the bullpen is one of the most, underrated tasks of a head coach and pitching coach, is having a best case, a worst case scenario. How do you have guys, where are you going to piece together your outs? And it's funny because these games all present different scenarios and different, whether it's getting 1 out, coming out lefty situation, or, a righty, do you send them out for that 3rd or 4th inning? These are all things that JD has a good pulse on inside that locker room. And like I said, my X factor this weekend is going to be Alex McFarland. When he's used and how he's used is going to be of paramount importance to this ball club.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. You touched on something that kind of stood out to me. You said, you got to win the game and kind of make the decisions in the moment. I think that's one of the strengths of Gino DiMare. I think he does that throughout the regular season. I think he's really focused and tunnels in on that moment. And I think that's why we've seen kind of the midweek success kind of pick back up recently, because I think he places that emphasis on that with the team in general. And certainly as head coach, he's looking for his first regional victory. So we'll see as a head coach how he pieces it all together. Obviously, once again, with JD kind of controlling the pitching and Alex McFarland, like you mentioned, having Andrew Walters, I think he's going to be big, and I think they're going to use him. They're not. There's no reason to hold him. They're going to use him, and certainly he'll have to be ready multiple games. You touched on the rain being a factor. That'll be something definitely that they'll have to pay attention to. So I find it very fascinating. You touched on Carson Palmquist earlier. Yeah, the last game against NC State, he did not pitch well, but before that, his last 5 starts, 3-1, ERA under 1. So he had been really good. And I expect him to have a good performance there in that second game, regardless of who they play. Javi, moving ahead to the hitters, a lot of guys putting up some good individual numbers at the top. That they're kind of piecing it together at the bottom with giving guys different looks there and different opportunities. But starting with the leaders of this team as the hitters, Yo-Yo, CJ leading off, and obviously Burke and those guys, Max obviously too. But just those top of the order guys, what are you kind of seeing with the lineup with those guys in particular?
Yeah, look, I look at this Hurricanes lineup, and the first thing that stands out to me is CJ Kayfus, the leadoff batter. I mean, he's such a dynamic hitter, and I think he draws a lot of parallels to former Hurricane John Jay. He doesn't overwhelm you with physical tools. He doesn't have, he's not hitting balls out of the park at an exponential rate, but he's always on base. He's always putting the ball in play. He's such a tough out too. I mean, you look at his on base percentage, well over 400. It's like this guy is our engine. He's a straw that stirs the drink. And then you have guys like Burke, Morales, Romero, even a guy like Levinson who's come on as of late. They rely on Kayfus to sort of put the pressure on the pitchers. He's good at stealing bags. He's a very good base runner. He just does everything right. So if Miami goes as Kayfus goes, and then you have a guy like Morales is going to be a top flight draft pick, next year. This guy has all the tools physically. He's a great defender. He hits the ball to all fields. I think that's the most important thing that Yo-Yo does is there's nowhere you can really pitch him. So if he's clicking and Kayfus is on base, this team is scary. The one thing that I think has bitten the Canes as of late has been the strikeout. They've been susceptible to some high strikeout games, which especially coming into a regional, you want to make these pitchers work. You want to make the at-bats long. You want to make sure that they feel the heat. You want to make sure that they understand that this roster there's going to be guys 1 through 9 that can put pressure on you. That being said, that all starts with Kayfus and Morales.
You touched on strikeouts. Just look at the numbers, averaging about 9 strikeouts a game. Multiple guys with over 20 on their strikeout per plate appearance percentages, and certainly that's something to pay attention. Stay with Yo-Yo, because to me, I think he's kind of a catalyst. I know CJ leads off, and I know he gets on base, and certainly they rely on him, and he's been great. But to me, the kind of the momentum of the team, the personality, the energy, whatever you might call it, I think Morales, when he's playing well and hitting, like you said, he can kind of do it all. His extra base hit numbers are impressive, 34 on the year coming into it, can kind of do it all over the field. And I think when he's clicking, I think it really helps this lineup, not just because of where he hits, but I just think the energy that he brings. And I'm very curious in seeing how he's going to rise to the moment. I think this is what he wants to do. I think he's talked about being great and leading this team and the whole thing. And this is it. See how he performs in regional play. But even though he's been kind of scuffling towards at the end of the year, I think if I were to predict, I would say he's going to have a good regional.
Yeah, Chris, and look, from a pitcher standpoint, I've been in scouting report meetings, my better part of my adult life. I understand how they view a guy like Morales, right? So his name's going to be circled on every single scouting report. He's going to be the one guy that opposing teams aren't going to let beat them, right? So pitching coaches, head coaches, everybody in that bullpen, they're talking about Yo-Yo. How do we get Yo-Yo out? Let's confuse him with patterns, different pitch sequences. Let's pitch him inside. Let's knock him off the plate. So if you're a guy like Yo-Yo, this is like you mentioned, this is the moment you want, right? He's going to be in front of his home crowd, in front of his family and friends. It's going to be a packed Mark Light Stadium. Yo-Yo's the guy. Yo-Yo is the guy day in and day out that opposing pitchers are going to worry about, right? So they're going to do everything they possibly can to make sure he's not the one that beats him. And that puts a guy like Burke, a guy like Romero in a nice position, because presumably they're going to see quite a bit of fastballs. They're going to see pitches around the plate. If Yo-Yo's not going to get pitches to hit, someone else in the lineup is. So you got to be able to, as Yo-Yo, you have to embrace that role. You can't let it get to you. He has to be extremely patient. I don't envision him seeing a lot of fastballs, a lot of pitches he can handle early on, especially against Canisius. Canisius is going to want Burke and Romero to beat him. And Yo-Yo has to be willing to, have those team at bats. If there's a walk out there, take the walk, pass it along to the next guy, give other guys opportunities to hit. I just think when, like you mentioned, the energy of this ball club revolves around Yo-Yo. I've seen Yo-Yo play growing up in Miami. He's kind of like one of those Miami-Dade County legends. And, you watch him play at Braddock High School. It's coached by one of my good buddies, Harold Martinez, who sort of groomed him in this role of being, the next big star at the University of Miami. So you mentioned it. He's always wanted this role. This is his moment. And, I'm really excited to see him this weekend.
Yeah, no doubt. And certainly, year 2 for him. He's taking the jump. We'll see how he kind of, like I said, he's on the big stage, and we'll see how he performs. Javi, one of the things I mentioned was the bottom of the order with the lineup. They're kind of mixing different guys in. Is there a guy or two, kind of the other guys that we haven't touched on in the lineup, that you're curious to see how they perform, or that could be essentially kind of X factors for this team this weekend?
Yeah, look, I mentioned him earlier, but Zach Levinson, I think he's got raw power to all fields. He's a guy that scares you, especially when he's at the bottom of the order too, because you kind of lull people to sleep at the bottom of the order. Pitchers sometimes tend to relax or think, oh, maybe this guy will bunt, or he's looking to hit the ball the other way. He's not going to do damage. But look at a guy like Levinson. When he puts the ball in play, he does it at, he's looking to hit the ball hard and hit it far. A guy like Ariel Garcia is another one, a shortstop out of Christopher Columbus. He's shown that he has power to all fields. And then, he's been hitting ninth the last couple series, but Dom Patelli's another one. He has power to all fields as well. And when he connects, he's the same thing. He's looking to do damage. I think what you want to do at the bottom of the order, especially in a regional, is there's going to be opportunities to bunt. You want to make sure guys get their bunts down, hit behind runners. With the same token, though, I mean, if these guys have power to all fields, it's scary for an opposing pitcher to, you're thinking, oh, 7, 8, 9, I can sort of relax a little bit. And you have a guy like Levinson who, if he makes contact, it's gonna go a long way.
Javi, before I get you out of here, your experience at UM, there from 2011 to 14, I'm curious your takeaways on it, the experience you had at UM, and obviously got a chance to watch you pitch quite a bit, and obviously at the high school level too. Just what do you remember about your UM experience?
Yeah, I think for me, I grew up so close to university, and I just remember like this time of year going to every single regional. I felt like every year you had a chance to go to a regional or super regional at Miami, and you're watching some of the best players in the country come through. So I think in the era that I grew up in, the early 2000s, it was like, the peak of Miami Hurricanes baseball. I just remember that's all I ever wanted for myself, was to have the opportunity to play for the Canes. And when I got that offer, when I got that opportunity to play, it was really a no-brainer for me. I always tell the guys that have the opportunity or do end up playing at Miami, don't take it for granted. It's such a special place. Guys are going to see this weekend the true power of the Miami community. People are going to be out there in droves. They're going to be rooting for him. Mark Light is such a special place to play and to watch a baseball game. Honestly, I wish I had more eligibility. I'm 30 years old now, and I'm far removed from my prime playing days. But I mean, there's nothing I want more than to put on the jersey one more time. And look, the Miami Hurricanes baseball community is such a special place, and to have a guy like Gino and JD who they understand the gravity of these regionals. They understand the gravity of these moments. They've been to Omaha as players, now as coaches. They're going to have these guys ready. I really hope the atmosphere is electric, and I hope that we can pull it out. I'm confident. I think Miami's in a prime position. They've put themselves in a great place as a 6th national seed. They just got to handle their business this weekend.
Hey, any memories from the perfect game? Only one of 2 guys to do it at UM against Villanova there your last year. Any memories of that? Me personally, I'll just share mine. I was not at the game at the time. It was cooking that you were doing it. I gathered my stuff and got there probably 6th, 7th inning, just to get there in case you did it, and you did. So I was able to cover it and write about it. And I was glad to do that. Got some good photos. I remember that, just being able to get there. But I remember scrambling and getting over there, and just to see for the potential, for the possibility. But any memories, Javi, that stand out to you? And did you get anything from that game? Any memorability, anything like that? Anything you were able to take home with you?
I wish it was NIL back then, that's for sure. But no, I look, honestly, that game was such a cool moment for me and my family. My family went to all my games. Like I said, mentioned, we live so close to university that having my family and friends there was the most important thing for me. And then, after the game, realizing that my brother was on the radio call was also just so cool. That's the kind of stuff that you only hear about like in baseball movies or someone writing about it, right? So it's a moment I'll never forget. I don't remember much about the game, to be completely honest. It was all sort of a blur. I remember, coming back in the 7th and 8th innings, and there was some really crazy, spectacular plays that happened. And then, you kind of sit in the dugout, and it sort of hits you like, oh my gosh, this is going to happen. And I always remember, I'm sort of a baseball fanatic, baseball historian. There's always like certain plays that stick out to you in perfect games that probably in any other normal situation, a normal outing, they probably don't get made. I remember the 8th inning, Sebastian Diaz, a freshman, gets put in left field. And, I think I had a 3-1 count or something like that on their 8th batter, threw a fastball out over the plate. He hits a screaming line drive. And Sebastian, I don't know where he was positioned. Gino had him positioned there, but he was basically playing behind shortstop. And he makes a diving sort of shoestring catch to save the perfect game in the 8th inning. I went back into the dugout and I sat there, and I basically got goosebumps all over my body. I was like, man, this is 3 outs away from this happening. Certainly a great memory for me. It's great for my family. It's cool for university. I think people don't realize I only had 6 strikeouts in that game, so I wasn't doing much of the work. I had a lot of good defenders behind me. I was never much of a strikeout guy, so 6 was more than plenty for me. I relied on my defense more often than not, but still a great memory. I think about it all the time. Like I said, I'm still very connected to this university. I watch all the games. I was living in North Carolina this past 2 years, so I got to go watch them play all around the Carolinas and other ACC schools. So I love the school, love the university. I'm rooting for them hard, and I'm just excited for them.
Yeah, we'll see how it all shakes out. That's awesome memories. Thanks for sharing. Thanks for taking the time, Javi. It was good catching up. Take care, man.
All right, Chris. Hopefully we do this again after a successful weekend, man.
Yeah, definitely.